Hi everyone, welcome back to the inTutor. In this video, we are going to be talking about another very crucial concept in programming in general and more particularly in C programming. We are going to be talking here about the concept of functions. Well, a function is just a block of code that does a particular stuff. If you can remember well in a previous video, I promised you I was going to explain to you the meaning of this int main, the void, and return 0 that kept on repeating itself in all our C programs. Since we're talking about functions, I'll profit to explain to you that in this video. Functions are useful because they actually help us to break down bulky codes into smaller parts that can actually be modified, easily reused in other codes also. Like variables in C programming, you can't use a function without actually telling the compiler that okay, well, I'm going to be using so function. For us to do that, we need to tell the compiler the return type of the function. Return type here goes same as in the concept of variables. It's simply the type of the value is going to return. Every function must return a value. Now, the value is returning, is it going to be an integer? Is it going to be a string? Is it going to be a character? Is it going to be what kind is that going to be? The next we're going to talk about the name of the function. Like the name of the function could be any name, you could give it any name except main actually. Because main in C programming happens to be a function, and this function is a very important function in C programming. The next thing you need to tell this compiler is the parameters that are going to be used within the function. I explain that later as within the video. So now talking about the main function, as you can see here, we have the return type of the main function, that's an integer. So this main function, whatever the case, is supposed to return an integer, and for that reason we always return the integer 0. Its name being the main. Whenever you execute a C program, the first part of the code to be executed is the main function. The main function, for the case of our studies, would not take any parameters. So that's why we give it a void. So the void here tells us that it's empty. It doesn't take any parameters. You could still leave it empty this way. And within this parentheses, you can actually fill the body of the function. Well, talking about parameters are simply variables or values on which the function is actually operating. Let's say we had a function that's supposed to add two numbers. We know that there are numbers, so it should return an integer. The name we could give to that function could just be add. And well, what are the parameters that we can actually give to this variable? We know that we're going to be adding two numbers, so we just give an integer, I don't know, maybe a, another integer b, and okay, this works because we are just going to add two numbers. If our function actually was to add three numbers, we could still add another integer, let's say c for example, and it must not be abc, it could still be x, y, z, whatever value. Within the body of the function, we know that this function is going to return a given value. So what value should it return? Given that we'll have some two numbers, a number a and a number b, that's going to be passed to the function add, what value is it going to return? Now we could say, okay, return the value of a plus b, and we have just made a function that sums two numbers. So let's somehow see how we can actually make use of this function along the line. I just printed out as percentage d the value of add 2 and 7. So it's like actually creating somewhere a machine somehow that's supposed to add two numbers, and along your main program you just call its name and give it values and it does the work for you. So let's actually run the code and see the output, if it actually output the value 9. So yes, it prints out 9 and everything's okay. We actually created a function add with parameters a and b that returned this just sum, and then we called it along the day, giving the value of a 2 and the value of b 7. Here we called a and b parameters, but once you're actually calling the function, what you give to it is an argument. You are given an argument to fit out where a parameter was to be. So 2 here is the argument you're giving out to fill in the value of the parameter a you gave at the beginning. It might be like you had an integer, I don't know, an integer x that maybe had the value of 4. Along this way, you could still decide to say, okay, I use x here, and it still works. So those integers could be variables or they could still be direct numbers as 7. Yes, it actually works out. Well, I'll actually like us to bring out this stuff and let's try somehow a more interesting example. What if you actually wrote a program that prints out the first 50 prime numbers, let's say the first 50 prime numbers, knowing that a prime number is a number that has as factor 1 and itself.